And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce Organic Consumers Association International Director and Co-founder, Ronnie Cummins.
Well, good evening, and thank you for coming on this call. I don't think I have to remind anyone that we have a severe crisis in this country. It's not just a crisis of Monsanto and genetic engineering and industrial agriculture out of control. We have a full-blown public health crisis, food crisis, climate crisis, and of course a political crisis. But the good news is that we in the Organic Consumers Association also have a solution to this crisis, we believe. We like to use the terminology regeneration. If you've been reading our newsletter, you've seen that we're talking about regeneration of the soils of our food and farming system. We're talking about regenerating our health, regenerating the power of our grassroots movement, both in the marketplace and in the political arena. And we need to make our voices loud and clear. So tonight what we're going to talk about is how we can bring the food, natural health, climate, and Bernie movements, the Bernie Sanders movement, the 13 million people who voted for Bernie Sanders, the 13 million people who donated $230 million to his presidential campaign. Of course, if Bernie Sanders were in the White House right now, we'd be having a different conversation because Bernie was quite vocal about supporting not only GMO labeling, but factory farms and organics. But this movement that we have been part of for the last 18 years, the Organic Consumers Movement, we are at a point in history where we've got to unite with other forces. I mean, we saw last August when they ran through the DARK Act, taking away the right of consumers to know whether their food's genetically engineered or not, taking away the right of Vermont to implement the law that they had passed. I mean, it didn't matter that 90% of us across the country supported this. Congress basically slapped us in the face along with the big corporations. So we got to create a more powerful force, not only in the marketplace where we have a lot of experience with our consumer education, our boycotts, our pressure on companies, but also this is what we now call the consumer revolution. But we also have to join forces with other groups. We all face the same thing. We're not strong enough alone to accomplish our objectives. I mean, the Standing Rock struggle, for example, we thought we had won at the end of last year. Now they're going to go ahead and build that pipeline. So unless we can bring the food movement, the natural health movement, the environmental and climate movement together with the Bernie troops, the people who voted for Bernie Sanders, it's going to be very difficult for us to exert our power, not only in the marketplace, but in the political arena, what we're calling the political revolution. And I believe that if we unite our forces, raise our voices with a positive message, a solution, a regenerative solution, we can make a lot of headway right here in 2017.
All right. So now we'd like to take our first question from our guests that are on the line with us. We've got Joseph from O'Fallon, Missouri. Joseph, you're live. What's your question?
I'm not Joseph. Did I get put on the line?
Yeah, I apologize, Joseph. Yes, you are live. What's your question for us tonight?
Well, my name is Christopher. My question is, I was having this conversation today with someone at work, and I was talking about how we need to stay healthy. Her daughter, her 32-year-old daughter, has a thyroid condition. She's had it since she was 9. She's very heavy. We were talking about, eating healthy, and she said it's just so expensive to eat healthy food, organic or sustainably grown food. So one of the things that I think we need to do is either, change the reality of that or change the perception of that and try to get more direct. There are farmers markets, but try to make it more affordable for people to eat healthy food. We also need to confront, the addiction and help people understand that a lot of bad foods have addictive ingredients. So there's a lot of education that's necessary. But fundamentally, I'm asking, or my question is, how can we make sustainable and organic food more affordable for most people?
Well, I think that this is the number one question that we get asked by people who aren't already regular organic consumers. In the United States today, about 45 to 50% of the population say that they seek out organic food. But of course, that's not all the time, and the other half of the population are not even seeking it out. Okay, the first thing about cost of organic. There's the real cost, and then there's the cost at the checkout counter in the grocery store. And, of course, most of you already know this. But with organic food, we need to explain to people that you only pay for it once. You pay for it at the checkout counter. If you're eating chemical food or GMO food, you're not only paying for it at the checkout counter, you're paying for it when you pay your taxes on April 15th. You're paying billions of dollars of subsidies to industrial agriculture and GMO companies. Number two, you're paying for it with your health insurance. If you have health insurance, you've noticed that the prices keep going up and up and up. And it's not just the greed of the big pharmaceutical companies. It's the fact that the public health is deteriorating. So you're paying for everyone else's consumption of chemical food as well. Okay, then obviously the damage to the environment, the pollution of the water, the disruption of the climate, all these things have to be cleaned up. They end up costing money. They cost a lot of money. But the main thing, like this thyroid condition you mentioned, which is now at epidemic levels in the United States, is this is a long-term illness. It costs a lot of money. So to put things in perspective, in the 1950s and 60s, the average American household spent 23% of their income on food. Right now, it's about 10 or 11%. So we're spending a lot less in terms of our overall household income. Also, look at the European Union. A country like Italy is spending 17% of their household income on food. It's very similar in France and other countries. They don't have the same feeling about organic being too expensive. They know it's very important. So we've got to change the perception, but we also have to realize that if you don't have enough money, you're not going to be able to afford healthier organic food. So that's one reason why the Organic Consumers Association has gotten very active in this movement for a $15 an hour minimum wage. I mean, what we've noticed over the years is that poor people understand just as well as middle class or upper middle class people the difference between junk food and chemical food and organic food. They would like to buy it. But if you don't have money in your pocket and there's no store where you can buy it, you're going to do that. So I just like to say Organic Consumers Association, has always said that the price of organic food should never go lower than what it costs the farmer to do it right, and it should never go lower than what it costs to pay the workers in the food chain for making a decent living. But that's a difficult question. We're going to have to go over and over to people and explain to them that we are what we eat, and it's a lot cheaper to start changing your habits right now. Learn how to cook, eat organic food.
All right. Looks like we've got time to take another question from the audience. Let's see. We've got Barbara from Massachusetts. Barbara, you're live. What's your question?
My question is I work with children and teach them about repurposing lawn into meadows to attract bees and butterflies. It's a pollinator garden, and the bees are disappearing at a really rapid rate that the average person doesn't know about. I belong to pollinator groups, and the rusty patch bee, which was going to be listed on the endangered list, has been taken off by the Trump administration. And what are we going to be doing to preserve our food source if we have no bees? And I'd like to see people call their congressmen. In Massachusetts, we're all set, but I think in other states they really need to see that their food source is in danger. So that's my question. How are people going to help that?
Yes, I think for right now we all recognize that we've got a tough road to hoe with the current federal government and the makeup of the Congress. I mean, the Democrats weren't doing that great of a job protecting the pollinators either, but now we've got outright apologists for factory farm who want to roll back everything. And pollinators are not going to get any protection from the federal government more or less in the next 4 years. But we still need to pressure them. We still need to identify the members of Congress who are the bee killers and the people who are willing to stand up for the bees and for our health. But as you pointed out, a more fertile arena for our grassroots action the next 4 years is at the city, county, and state level. We need to pull out all the stops to get bans on the chemicals that are killing the bees, and to get the pollinator habitats and really the consciousness of the public up on this. One thing we need to do is point out that these neonics that are killing the pollinators and the Roundup herbicide and others being sprayed that are part of the problem, these are harming humans as well as the bees. And we need to build an awareness that the attack on the pollinators is an attack on our children, it's an attack on ourselves, and that we've got to put an end to this. This is not a question of making a few reforms. We have to drive neonicotinoids off the market, drive Roundup off the market, and speed up our process to make America's food and farming system organic. Now, we have a modest, sounds modest in a way, but it's pretty ambitious. In our Consumer Revolution platform, we say, okay, organic's going to grow 50% in the next 4 years of the Trump administration. We need to make it grow 100% at least. We need to get much closer to the tipping point. So the bees, as the bees go, so we go, and let's build a strong national movement to protect the bees and the babies and ourselves, and let's get active politically as well as boycotting the companies that are using the neonics and buying organic food where it's banned. And let's get active all the way from Main Street to Washington, D.C.
All right. Thanks, Ronnie. Let's see. I've got Barbara from Michigan. She's concerned about living in an area surrounded by non-organic farmers. Barbara, you're live. What's your question?
Hi. Yes. Are any farmers groups that are non-organic joining you? And do you have a program to help the small family farmer switch to organic? Because from talking to local farmers and people that are their friends, it's a real economic gamble that a lot of them don't feel that they can take. And we have some big corporate farms around here, and it's almost as though they're waiting to see someone fail so that they can buy up the property.
Yes, this is obviously a nationwide problem. It's a global problem. There are some, in terms of organic, it's important to keep in mind that we have, 25,000 certified organic farmers in the U.S., but we've got 10 to 20 times that many farmers who are actually farming organically but who are not certified and who are selling locally. We need to give our support to all these farmers that are farming organically, whether they're certified or not. And we need to buy local as well as organic. In terms of other farm groups that are somewhat supportive, the National Farmers Union is much better than, of course, the American Farm Bureau, but they're not a huge organization either. And so what we have to do is, and especially if we can't look at the federal government and most state governments to give an incentive for farmers to start making the transition to organic, we're going to have to create the incentives in the marketplace. And we can do that by putting exposing the poisons that the chemical farmers and the factory farms are laying out and the GMOs, and purchasing only organic food, whether it's certified or not. And once farmers start to realize that there is a better price to be had, they will go for it. Right now we're seeing, for example, grass-fed, 100% grass-fed beef, 100% grass-fed and finished, is growing at 50% a year. It's growing 4 times as fast as organic. And things like grass-fed organic yogurt are growing at 80%. So there's tremendous demand for these products. In fact, there's a shortage of organic ingredients and 100% grass-fed ingredients right now. But we have to win over, each of us 5 or 10 more people to understand this is a matter of life and death. And we need to speak to the farmers and point out, for example, there's now a transition to organic program where you don't have to wait 3 years to start identifying your products as organic. After 1 year that you've signed up to make the transition to organic, you can put this transition to organic label on your products. And we need consumers to know it's just as important to buy the transition to organic, in some ways more important, and the organic local food that's not even certified as organic as it is the certified USDA. And if we do this and pick up the momentum, we're going to reach a tipping point, I believe, by the time that Trump's first term is over in 2020.
All right. Thanks, Ronnie. These are good questions. And we do want to take a few more questions from the audience while we've still got time on the call. So let's take a look at Juliette in Florida. Juliette, you're live.
Hi.
What's your question?
Hi. I'm Juliette from Orlando, Florida, and I see water rising in Miami. Okay, I'm in Orlando, though. But I know that the water is rising because of us not meeting our goals as far as, what the EPA wants the world to do as far as cleaning up the air. Why is there something that we can do to stop Trump's team from deregulating these companies, and which they're already putting junk in our rivers and oceans? How can we stop them from deregulating these companies or giving them tax breaks or whatever they're doing, making them pay what they've got to pay so that they will not continue to abuse our quality of air, our quality of living, and our quality of life?
Yes, well, when we mentioned earlier in the call these house parties and community meetups that we want to start organizing 1 month from today, basically, or the first day of spring, actually, March the 20th, the idea is that we need to get together in our local communities, and we are going to get together in our local communities with everyone we can in the food movement, in the natural health movement, in the Bernie movement. There's a group called Our Revolution that we're working with. This is the group that represents the 13 million people who voted for Bernie. They are anxious to start to break through the walls that divide us all, because what happens is that food activists are over here, climate activists are over here, natural health activists are over here, economic justice activists are over here, and the people who get really involved in electoral politics at the city or county or state or federal level are over here. We need to break down these walls, and we need to start doing this right now in our local communities. We are approaching every group that we've ever worked with in the food movement to help us do this. We're approaching every natural health movement like Mercola that we work with to do this, and we have the blessing now of Our Revolution. They've got 3 million people on their email list. Dr. Mercola has a couple of million people. We've got 2 million people on our Facebook pages and 500,000 on our newsletter. If you'll recall those ballot initiatives that we fought in California and Oregon and Washington and Colorado, we actually got over 8 million people to cast their votes in campaigns that we worked on in just 4 states. So we got to get involved politically. Yes, we've got to protest Pruitt and the new clowns that Trump is putting in the EPA, but we need to realize that fighting defense and resisting this is not enough. We've got to get proactive. We not only need a brand new Congress in 2018, we need a brand new government starting all the way from city council and county board and the state legislatures. There's a lot of elections this year in 2017, and we need to start identifying candidates. OCA is developing a survey that will make it easy for you to ask elected officials to sign. Hundreds of us will ask them in each community, and people running for office, and we can uncover some people. The reason why the waters are rising in the oceans, of course, is related to the global warming and also relating to the fact that we're melting the polar ice caps. What a lot of people don't understand that we as organic consumers are going to have to explain is that the major source of greenhouse gas pollution and global warming is our out-of-control food and farming system. It actually contributes 44 to 57% of all greenhouse gases. So you do more damage if you're not an organic consumer with your knife and fork every time you sit down than you do driving your car around. Of course, we've got to reach zero emissions as the countries of the world have pledged to do by the year 2050. But we also have to transform our food and farming system and the way we use land, not only in the United States but globally. And we can do this. We want you to join our consumer revolution. We want you to join our political revolution. If you haven't already pressed the button to say you would be willing to organize or attend a community meeting in your area, please press 1 right now. And we are going to be getting back on the phone with you at the regional level. Everyone who agrees to help organize one of these house parties or community meetups, and we will provide materials, we'll provide inspiration, and we're going to have more of these calls with people like Vandana Shiva speaking to you, with people like Bernie Sanders. We're going to keep this up. This is it. It's now or never, and we are ready for you to join us in this consumer revolution, political revolution. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Ronnie. So it looks like we have just a few minutes left, Ronnie. I just wanted to open it up one more time for your final thoughts to our listeners before we have to end the call tonight.
Well, I just wanted to say how thankful I am to be part of a network like the Organic Consumers Association. When we started the OCA 18 years ago, we had no idea we'd ever reach a point where we had millions of supporters out there and where we could work with groups. I mean, we did a spreadsheet recently with all the groups that we worked with fighting Monsanto and for mandatory labeling of GMOs, and we found that we and our closest allies, people like Dr. Bronner's, Dr. Mercola, Friends of the Earth, Food Democracy Now!, Center for Food Safety, animal rights groups, that we have 25 million people like you in the food movement. And of course, we've got these other movements that are ready to work with us now. Groups like Citizens Climate Lobby, the religious activists and interfaith Power and Light, the Our Revolution group, the follow-up to the Bernie campaign, and many, many more. So when we have these community meetups on starting March the 20th, we're going to strive to bring all the different movements together. A lot of us don't even know the other people in other movements in our local communities. But once we do get to know each other, and once we start with our local dimension of marketplace pressure, whether it's boycotts against factory farms or the new campaign we're going to have called Care What You Wear, which is exposing GMO cotton and the dangers and the sweatshops involved in our clothing cycle. We're going to fight against the fake organic producers in the dairy sector and the poultry sector who are essentially using CAFO or factory farm methods but still calling us organic. We got a lot of work to do, but if you'll look around the country, I have not seen people more open to action in the 50 years I've been an activist. I got active in the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement of the 1960s. I came from the Deep South where it was extremely difficult to organize. I was, harassed by the Ku Klux Klan. I saw people shot and beaten and shot with water hoses. And, here I am 50 years later, but I can tell you that I have never seen more potential for an organic revolution and for a total revolution, not only in the United States, but south of the border. You may not know the Organic Consumers Association has a whole network in Mexico of organic consumers and farmers, and they are up in arms about all this talk about a wall and deporting all the immigrant workers and a world in which bigotry and racism and sexism is, threatening everyone. So thank you so much for your support for OCA. Thank you in advance for signing up to organize or to attend one of these community meetings. And you will hear from us soon about the next call and the next steps. Good night.
All right. Thanks, Ronnie. And I just want to say to everyone on the call, thank you so much for joining us. I've actually just been given word that we've got a few people still in the queue to donate. So I've been told we can leave the line open. Ronnie, if it's okay with you, I've got one more question here. And we can answer that and then we can wrap things up for the night.
Certainly.
All right. Mary from California. You're live. What's your question?
Yes. The Trump administration is talking about eliminating the USDA organic program. If that happens, is there a plan in place to replace it amongst, from the OCA or someone else?
Well, we had, the Freedom Caucus are the ones making that threat. They're saying there are all these government institutions that need to be abolished, and one of them is the National Organic Program. They can't abolish organic farmers, and they can't abolish organic consumers, and there's about 50 million people who now regularly or occasionally buy organic food, and there's several 100,000 farmers and ranchers who are growing food the right way. Before we had organic standards, they weren't even finalized until the year 2002. Before we had organic standards, what we had were state certification and enforcement of organic standards, and then we had nonprofit organizations, third-party certification. I guarantee you, if the Trump administration and the Republican Congress and the status quo Democrats who voted for the DARK Act move to abolish the National Organic Program, we will rise up and we will still have organics, we will still have certification, we will still have enforcement, but it'll have to come at the state and local level. We've done that before and we'll do it again if we have to. I think the most important thing is to be determined that we are going to move not only to protect and safeguard organic standards, but we're going to make organics the norm instead of the alternative. The way organics are growing right now, in 30 years, most food in the United States will be organic. But we don't have 30 years to get to this point. I believe we can do this within the next decade, and we'll do it with or without Congress, with or without the National Organic Program.
All right. Well, I think that is actually a great point to close the conversation tonight. Thank you, all of you, for joining this call. We're so grateful to all of our supporters, and it's so important to have these conversations. And like Ronnie said, hopefully we'll be able to have more of them down the road. For more information about the Organic Consumers Association, please visit organicconsumers.org. And if you're still on the line waiting to make a donation, don't worry, we'll get to you if you don't mind holding a couple of minutes longer. So again, thanks everyone for a great call, and have a great night.